And it's there. It's happening now. We're live. Robert Bain.
Sir,
Good
how
to
are you?
see you. How are you?
I'm great, man. Body feels good. I feel good. It's gonna be a great weekend.
Okay, so what are you before we get into the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power? What are you doing? Where are you?
I am currently in Eastland, New York, out on Long Island. I'm competing in the Strength of Heroes Classic in Bohemia on Sunday. It's pro invite only powerlifting meet. Uh, should have a good showing. It's a cool meet for a great cause. It's basically they are raising money to help bring military dogs home and find them
Oh,
homes
that's awesome.
after their service. Most of the times, these dogs have experienced great trauma. In many cases, their original handlers were killed overseas, and
Oh
that's part of
no.
the trauma that they deal with. And so we are raising money to do that. Going to be some great lifting going on. I get to share the platform with some of my best friends. Actually, very exciting for me personally. Not necessarily a lot of people know this gentleman. His name is Anthony Hobaika. He's one of my favorite lifters, one of my best friends in the world, and he and I get to share the platform together for the very first time. So uh,
Oh,
we
dude,
are
that's awesome.
we are incredibly excited to be able to have that opportunity to together and hope for some big numbers and we'll see what happens.
Well, that's phenomenal. Well, I hope you do well. I look forward to hearing updates about this throughout the weekend. I know you're going to be competing in a bunch of events. What are the things that you do before we get into the next thing? What are
Sure.
your main events?
Sure. The three events in a powerlifting competition, full power, is the squat, bench, and deadlift in that order. And the way that it works is you receive three attempts at each lift. You must successfully complete one of those attempts to move on to the next event. If you do, you have the option to continue to move on, or you can raise the weight for your next attempt and add to what is called your total. So the top lift in each one of those disciplines adds together, and that becomes your total.
That's
Uh,
spectacular. Well,
so
man, I think you're going to dominate, right? You're going to do really well. I would imagine.
I want to believe so. It's cool. Probably three or four of the top squatters in the world will be there. I'm one of them, and so we're excited to compete against each other. So
Well, I hope you go and crush it. But as we're talking about heroic acts of valor and strength, let's talk about the Rings of Power. How are
yeah.
you enjoying this show so far? What do
Oh
you
my
think?
god. So when it was first announced, I mean, because we got the announcement in like 2019,
That's
like
right.
early 2019, late 20, and I was so excited. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was bogus. I thought it
Hmm.
was just like fan art, like it's not going to happen. As we continue to get more and more information, like this is actually happening, and then like it really built. I was really excited because I've been such a fan of Tolkien's work, and especially of the original cartoon that we saw, decades.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Just like
Absolutely.
the weirdest, terrible but great animation. Uh, like
It's
it's
like
really odd.
frightening, but beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then seeing the translation of then the Lord of the Rings saga and then the Hobbit, and it's awesome. And I love these are things I grew up in my childhood with, and I loved it so much. And this is like,
Yeah.
oh great, this is another way to explore it. I equated it, and some people are going to get mad at this, to all these different spin-offs are doing for Star Wars. There's this massive universe essentially
Yeah.
that you have access to because of either Tolkien himself or just those who have supported the work, and now we get to see it.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Absolutely.
so excited about this. And one of the key characters that's in uh, the entire saga of the Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Sauron. We don't know a lot about him other than he's bad.
Yeah, that's right. We don't. We don't. Let's, for the people who may have tuned into this and want to get like a real quick little primer of this world. So,
Yep.
and correct me if I go off the tangent or say something wrong. So it all begins with a song, right? And there's
Mhm.
Eru Eluvatser, and they're making the world, they're making the Arda, they're making the
Mhm.
stuff. And in this process, the most powerful, strongest voice is Melkor.
Mhm.
Melkor sings beautifully, but he takes control and changes the song. And Eru has to come in and be like, dude, we're not doing it this way. We're going to do it this way. Fast forward, the thing is created, and some of these entities, the Ainur and the Valar, I think the names are, decide
Mhm.
some of them want to go to this thing called Arda. They want to go visit this place. And so the ones who go, we know of Melkor being the first one as the kind of the evil entity, the big bad. And then you have Manwë and Mandos, and I don't remember all the rest of them. I know Tolkas came in there eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot of great names in there.
Absolutely. So Valinor's paradise, essentially, and they have these beautiful trees, wonderful trees. We get to look at these trees in the beginning of the new series, The Rings of Power. Now,
This
here's where we're
trio
going to get to.
essentially as it's looked at.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing we don't get to. What happens in the Silmarillion because they don't have the rights to it. But there's a giant spider A giant spider, Ungoliant, gets working with Melkor, and they say, let's go ahead and kill these trees. And Ungoliant bites the tree, sucks them out. We know of Ungoliant from The Lord of the Rings. We saw the daughter, Shelob, right? The big spider that Gollum kind of feeds orcs to.
She's
so
always
they can never be satiated. And so when Melkor gets these gems called the Silmarils, and we'll maybe talk about that. I got people coming in saying hello. Yes, hello, LinkedIn user. I don't know who you are, but I trust that you are dear friends.
Thank you for using LinkedIn. We appreciate that.
Absolutely, that's the best platform right now. Well, so then you have the Silmarils get taken away. They rename him. They rename the entity. He is no longer Melkor. And in Rings of Power, we don't hear the name Melkor. We hear the name. What name do we hear?
We hear so many names.
We hear Morgoth. That's the name of the big bad. That's his new name.
And we keep hearing Sauron as well. We keep hearing, and here's the thing: for those who don't know, these are not the same individual.
Yeah.
They could be the same entity.
They're different classes, right? So Sauron is the same kind of thing as Gandalf and Saruman and and Radagast and the Blue Wizards. I don't remember their names, but he's not inhibited. So like when you when these the Ainur, when the Maya or the Astari, whatever they call themselves, when they put on this like visage of humanity, it's like a cloak that they put on because they live in the kind of spirit world and the real world. And so when Sauron comes, he has tons of power. He's not limited. He goes with Melkor. He is one of the initial guys. Like, I'm here to be your number 2 guy. And he's cunning, right? He's cunning.
He is. He's cunning. He is bent on power, and it's interesting when you look at some of the similarities between the creation story. Talk about the Christian creation story and Morgoth and Melkor, and kind of that. I won't say the full fall, but it's pretty close. Like you had this.
Tolkien himself was a Catholic. He was very devout. Absolutely.
So very, very interesting similarities. Also, you look at the similarities of Sauron and Morgoth and the rule of 2. When it comes to Star Wars, you have one that has a power. One
I didn't even think about that. Okay.
By the way, who came up with the rule of 2?
I have no idea.
Darth Bain.
That's how you get your name. You're part of that illustrious line. Okay, so Morgoth has he's got 2 powers. He's got 2 groups of people. He's got on one side he has Sauron and all of his dark enchanting, sorcery, necromancer, whatever, and then you have Gothmog. Gothmog is Lord of the Balrogs. Very awesome beings.
Now, for those who don't know the Balrogs.
Balrogs. Durin's Bane, folks. Remember when Gandalf was on that path and says, You shall pass. He's talking to Durin's Bane, one of the surviving Balrogs.
Yes.
Now, Grace, we love Grace Sharkey. Let's talk real briefly, for no apparent reason, about Balrogs and the best Balrog battle that ever happened. We think of Gandalf fighting the Balrog. No. Best Balrog battle of all time, Feanor versus 3 or 4 Balrogs, and he dominates them until finally Gothmog comes and curb stomps him. Greatest of them all.
When it takes number 1 to come in and beat you, when it takes Jordan to come in and beat you because you're beating him real, like that's when you know, like, you gotta like that. We're going to talk on that too.
Absolutely. Okay. The foundations, what we're seeing in this show is second age, right? So the first stage is what we saw, the biggest battles. This stuff we're watching is not first age. That's first stage.
We see
Silmarillion.
We see glimpses of first stage in the first episode.
Absolutely. And then when the trees were there, that was before the first age. So there was like the years of the trees that came before everything. And then there was first age. We didn't see any of this in the show, but Beleriand. So there's this giant, like Middle Earth is like this big piece of property. There was an even bigger piece called Beleriand. That's where the first age battle took place. That's when the Valinor came out of Valinor and fought Morgoth, destroyed his bodily entity. He goes off into the ether, and they destroy half the continent. This is why you don't see Manwë and Tolkos and all the other ones like, let's go fight again in Middle Earth. No, you're going to destroy it, dude. You can't do that. You can't do that. So one of the things with power, right? So power is an interesting thing in Lord of the Rings. These entities give up their power to make things. So Morgoth gives his power to make the dragons and all these other creatures. Sauron will learn later, maybe in his fair form Anatar, He puts his essence into that one ring. So let's talk about what have you seen so far? It's been like, this is fantastic. This is interesting.
So certainly so just overall, the visuals are incredible. I have for those who haven't watched it, like, and for instance, if you've watched for 10 minutes and turned it off, one, you're an idiot. And
Agree.
you know who you are. But if you watch the visuals of this, it's beautiful, and there's nuance to everything. And they even talk about how in the library on the latest episode, there's black speech that's interwoven throughout different images and whatnot, which is important because the black speech is how, if you watch Lord of the Rings, that is how Sauron communicates.
Yep.
And so they think that because Sauron is gone, the black speech is dead, and that's what's very important. So all these things, and to your point of weaving their essence into, it's not just into individual objects. They weave their essence into their own story and their own mythos. Absolutely. And so all these artifacts that are left behind by them then create this, not only this repository. So take like the Horcrux, when you go the Harry Potter route, right? Yeah. Again, there's all these similarities between. This is why Tolkien is such an influential artist. What people don't realize.
One of the best writers of his time. Oh my gosh, the linguistics alone. You're 100% right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so many pull from this. So these S's are put, and so then what happens too is this now goes back to the Santa Claus legend. Is as people begin to find these things, the murmurs begin, and the more belief that happens that Sauron is real, then all these things start to become in motion. So that's what I've kind of seen is everyone thinks that Sauron's dead, except now we're starting to see no, there's still things happening. So part of the story, of course, is we're uncovering this, right? But we see the orcs and the works they're doing literally underground.
Yeah, we see the symbol, and we learn in episode 3 what that symbol means, right?
Right.
This is
just a symbol for Sauron. It's very important. This is a map.
It's a map. It's a geography.
Yes. And which again, very, very important to the overall storyline. So that's the thing that I've seen that I've loved is, I mean, certainly there are individual, like there's pieces of the art and and even the customs, like we go into with the doors and the rock breaking, and I always,
you would have done very well in the rock breaking competition.
I feel like I would have done it right. I do swing a good sledge. I don't do a lot of cardio because one, I don't speak Spanish, and two, like I don't like to, but I do have to do some general physical preparedness. So like just some, movement and running with a yoke, running with like large things in my hands, I call it farmer's walk, or swinging a sledgehammer against a tire. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I feel like I would have done very, very well with
the Dwarven realm was absolutely beautiful.
Sick.
I mean, the one challenge I have is like, I've heard a lot of online chatter. People don't like that there's 2 Dorans that exist. So in the Dwarven mythology, right? Dwarven mythology, they were one of the first to awaken. So I think it was Ulmo or something like that. One of the Valar loved them, created them, gave them life. And Iru's like, what are you doing? And we're using all these ridiculous names. But Durin is a guy whose essence goes life to life to life. So there's a never-ending line of Durans, even though a person dies. But the visuals, man, spectacular. Absolutely. I want to talk about Meteor Man. Let's talk about Meteor Man. All right. So tell me, who do you think Meteor Man, set the scene for our audience, and then let's talk about who you think it is.
So we see a streaking meteor come across the sky. This is they are not hobbits, so they look very much, they act very much like hobbits.
Proto-hobbits, we'll call them.
Yeah. So this meteor streaks across the sky and lands, and 2 of the more curious ones, they're the troublemakers, 2 girls, come upon the landing site, and there's a nude man in the middle of this site. He
came from the west. He came from the west, based on
very important, because this is where our conversation went. He comes from the west, and this man is there. He's naked. He's very large, even compared to the hobbits. Like not just like an average person would be. Like he's actually a very large individual, stature-wise, not necessarily width-wise, or anything. Very, very lean. But this is all important because he's unharmed by being in the middle of this meteor. So like he is the meteor. And there's a pullback scene. This is where I feel like there is, if nothing else, there is a nod to Sauron or a nod to those entities. Because if it pulls back and the flames, even just the embers, appear to be the Eye of Sauron.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, that's interesting. I did not see that. I got to rewatch that.
That's why I'm only halfway through the 3rd episode. So I pause certain things. I go back and go, did I see that right? because I know there's these little details, these little
Absolutely.
Easter
Oh, the details are phenomenal. Great point. Absolutely.
Yeah, but say so you pull that back. It's like this is the Eye of Sauron, and so then my wonder is a couple things. One, my first knee-jerk reaction is that's Sauron. That's Sauron in human form, because we're told in the run-up to the show, like we're going to see Sauron in human form.
Yeah.
Thinking about it after our conversation, it's are they really going to do that in the second episode? I doubt it. Like that, like logically, it doesn't make sense, especially when you've already filmed 5 seasons of this.
Yeah.
The singular benefit of the lockdowns is they couldn't leave New Zealand, so they filmed 5 seasons.
That's right. Like, just keep making it. It's fine. Okay,
Yeah,
so here's my thinking. All right. So I've heard the idea of Sauron because it's got the fire and all this. We don't know where Sauron has been, but I think he's been in Mordor. I think he's been hanging out in Mordor, gathering his strength back up. Now, if I'm not mistaken, historically within the Silmarillion, Numenor eventually comes, storms his gates, and says, "Hey, dude, you're coming with us." And that's when he puts on his fair form of Anatar and says, "Yes, I'd love to come and be your prisoner, and then also your main council, and then corrupt your society to worship Morgoth." But that's probably season 4, maybe. But I think that as I've thought about it more, people said, well, maybe it's Gandalf. So Gandalf, he comes in the books, I believe, Third Age. So he's not in here. Second Age. He's not in. He comes in towards the Third Age.
I have a theory that's going to run right alongside that, but go ahead.
But the Blue Wizards, we don't know when they came. So my suspicion is either it is Gandalf, and that's a great fan service because everyone loves Gandalf, or we will actually get to understand something or some fan fiction about the Blue Wizards. What have they been up to? What do they do? What was their? Did they fail? Did they win? But they could have come in the Second Age. So what are your current thoughts on Meteor Man? Who do you think it is?
He could be Saruman.
Saruman, okay. That could be interesting.
As the eye of Sauron. So Sauron could be hanging out in Mordor, gathering his strength, but who was his extension into the lands of man and into Middle-earth?
Now, so Saruman, he wanted it for himself. Like he allied himself in the Third Age with Sauron, thinking that I'll play along, and then if I find the ring, then I'll be the leader, and it'll be amazing. Because Saruman always had that chip on his shoulder. He wanted to lead the Astari, and it was Gandalf who was chosen, and Galadriel was a very big part of that, if I'm not mistaken. But
that's why I'm like, man, is this like where that origin of the obvious disdain the two of them have for each other, Galadriel and Saruman?
Yeah, that's right. I could see that.
This is where it comes from. Is this this could be an early season 1 type of thing where it's like, yeah, like they fucked around and found out.
I mean, what I love about like the show just so far, I mean, we've seen Ents in the very first episode. Like we see these incredible things. Like, will we learn about Ent wives? I have no idea. Maybe we will. Maybe
by the way, if you ever want to see Ents in real life, on I-80 in Pennsylvania, I want to say right in between New York and somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's in the middle. There literally looks like a line of Ent entities.
That's awesome.
Right along the road. We were working with my family. We saw that. I'm like, there's a healthy Ent population here in PA.
That's where the Entwives want it sounds like. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, we have this guy Halbred, some Hal name. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Is this the Witch King? Like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is the guy who, as we learn more in episode 3, he has a deep connection with as being the king of the Southlands that went and joined up with the enemy Morgoth. So he's got this connection of this, evil stuff, and blood is really important in Lord of the Rings. Like you inherit a lot of stuff before that's kind of magical in certain context.
Very important.
So what do you think? Who do you think this guy's going to end up being?
So the Witch King is a possibility. Also, I recall reading about, I think it's maybe fan fiction, but basically like a berserker.
Okay.
In the market after the drinking scene where he goes berserk.
He fights well. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so you wonder, like, okay, this obviously he's a trained combatant, or is he one of the riders, and is he actually the true king?
Oh, well, we get to see Isildur. I mean, we see in episode 3, we meet Isildur, meet his father. So we do see some of this. There's these interesting things brewing. I hope that Halbred,
if he's the king of the riders.
That's interesting. I have a feeling. Well, I hope I'm not. I hope I'm wrong. That they're going to have this pseudo love relationship between Galadriel and Halbrand, and he'll turn to the dark side, or he'll be corrupted by Morgoth, or by Sauron, I should say.
Possibly.
And then we'd have this whole thing, because there's also that little kid, right? The little kid gets that sword hilt, and his own blood gets the sword to kind of like go, "Woo, this is exciting."
Yeah,
and
that's super interesting. So
will he be another one of the 9? Maybe
sword feeds on blood, or is it the kid actually has that in him?
Yeah. Okay. So as people are watching these things, like I want to like the episodes themselves, you absolutely should watch this. If you have watched these episodes so far, watch part of it, like it's not for me. You're wrong. You're wrong. Watch it. Watch the full thing. Watch the first season. See what the story they're trying to tell. But the thing that makes this so interesting. So Sauron works with our buddy Celebrimbor. We met Celebrimbor episode 2, I think. Yes. Celebrimbor and Anatar is this fair form of Sauron. They make these rings. And this is all lore. We see this in Lord of the Rings. But 9 rings are created and eventually go to men. And those become the Nazgul. And they become this group of people that are mostly spirits, but they're certainly evil, definitely bound by the one ring.
Undead spirits.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know anything about these characters. Like there is like in Tolkien's own mythos, there is some that are named that have histories that we know about, but a lot of them don't. And people have said a lot of times, like, take this as fan fiction. It's not canon. But here's the reality. It is now, because that's what you're going to think about. I mean, these kids are not going to go and read the Silmarillion. And Grace Sharkey, I sent you the link to this, Grace, in your LinkedIn. You can come and join us if you want to.
Also, Grace, I have to say this because this is who Grace is. She is Beyonce always. She is Beyonce always.
I am a huge fan of Grace Sharkey, and I'm glad that she's going to give Bezos a chance as he tells this story of the Lord of the Rings. And I
would love for her to surprise us in the last 9 minutes and jump in. That would just.
Well, she's got the link, so if she wants to, you're able to do that.
Grace, you want to do it.
But I mean, the thing that I'm so passionate about is it has gotten so many people to go, okay, I want to go watch the YouTube of Nerd of the Rings. Tell me about these characters. Tell me the stories that they have. But this story will be part of what we all learn and think about when it comes to the Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings generally. And I love the visuals. I do. They're phenomenal.
And I really, really enjoy the scene in the elf village. I can't remember what it was called, but I'm terrible. I'm always terrible at the name. So
I was gonna get a little thing to look at it, but I was I'm not doing it.
They talk about he wants to forge something that changes the world. I'm like, oh, the foreshadowing.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, come on, Grace. Working that.
I know
I'm
telling her she can go on if it's Google Chrome or something. We can get it work. You can't go through Safari. You got to go through Chrome or Firefox for this thing to work. You're right on the money here. This is a different story, but it's got a flavor. Like when we're in the halls of the dead elves, you see an elf with a giant dog, and you're like, I know that story. They can't use that name. They can't say it legally, but we know about it. We know is it Huron?
Like I guarantee you, we're gonna see Lord of the Rings.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. We will absolutely plug. Nerd of the Rings is phenomenal. I mean, this guy, millions of views on his videos. They're about 10 to 15 minutes long, very easy to digest. And they give you these deep dives of these characters because Tolkien began with making a universe. I mean, Tom Bombadil might have existed beforehand in the trenches of World War I.
He began by making the languages.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely. He was a linguist.
That is what is so cool. He's like, oh, yeah, these should have stories around them.
Absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, he built this entire universe with languages and customs and cultures, and so much of what we take today comes from his mind. But he borrowed from Norse mythology. He borrowed from like Vinamoinen and all these other really interesting characters and oral traditions. So you're watching a master craftsman, and that's why I'm digging the show, man. I'm digging it.
And this is why, like, because you know who does this too, or has done this much more recently, is James Cameron.
Really?
James Cameron developed the language for the Na'vi.
Oh.
Avatar. Say what you want about his politics, but I
was talking about the movie. It's Dancing with Wolves, really.
Oh, it's Ferngully. This is a better graphic. And but that's what he developed the language for the Na'vi first, and then
Yeah,
developed the characters,
that's
and then
spectacular.
developed the story, which I thought was really cool. And so it's a little bit different than what people like. Oh, we got to weave their character into the story. No, we're going to weave the story around these individuals who are based in this language,
That's
and
spectacular.
then a history around that, which is that's the same blueprint that Tolkien used. I'm not comparing the two, but obviously the blueprints are very similar. That's what's really,
Yeah.
really one of the many reasons I love both this and the Avatar universe.
There's a thing like a lot of people I don't think realize it aren't like deep in the Tolkien mythos. So he wrote a ton of stuff that he didn't
Oh yeah,
publish. Wrote
prolific.
a ton. And so his son comes in after, and like his son loves what his father's created, and his son begins kind of compiling these different things, and the story kind of continues. And we're in again, we're in the show. We're Second Age. So little was written about the Second Age, and that's why I feel that just getting the appendices from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is going to give us enough of like the meat to build out upon this.
Absolutely. And when you have Tolkien's family like advising on this is what people don't get. Like
Yeah.
they don't give out the rights to his stuff ever.
Yeah.
But in this case, like they're advised, like they're the ones saying like this is what was meant. This is so
Yeah.
say all you want about this isn't true to the vision. It absolutely is.
Yeah,
True.
absolutely.
Fucking
And,
him.
and there's a lot of flack from different cast members that have like some of the pushback of like changing some of the ethnicities and things like that. But this is a multi-ethnic thing anyway. These are different races. This is a whole different world. People that get upset about that and saying, "Oh, it's not true to the vision," fuck you. You're wrong. It's a great adaptation. It's a great adaptation.
I gotta say this because and now I know you're a man of faith. This is not a knock on anybody who is, but the biggest fairy tale ever told is about a guy who doesn't look like us.
That's right. That's right.
Hate to break it to you, he wasn't blonde
right.
hair and blue eyed.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. This is I think that's a great point you bring up because like what we're seeing is high fantasy in what we're seeing with Rings of Power, and it's not being inundated with gratuitous violence, prolific nudity. It is really a story about the story. Now,
Yes.
Game of Thrones is awesome. I love the show. I do watch it, but I am so much more compelled by someone like Nori encountering somebody who came from the sky from far out west. That is far more compelling than I want to be the named heir. I want to be the heir to the throne. Like, okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
You
we
do.
get it. Everybody wants the throne. So take your clothes
Exactly.
off. Okay, sure, no problem.
I just want to have friends. Okay, that's a good story. It's a story about fellowship and friendship. I'm excited. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. We're at 27 minutes. I have a hard stop. I'm sure you do. You have a lot of things to do.
I do.
What are you most excited in the last couple of minutes? What are you most excited about when it comes to Rings of Power?
I'm most excited for the rest of the season to play out and what characters we get introduced to, whether they're ones we've seen before, and then what they're able to nod back to what we've seen so far in the original works of The Hobbit, of Lord of the Rings. So what are we going to see that are connecting those so that as they build this universe, this season to me lays the foundation for what could be, 2 decades of really, really dope shit.
Absolutely. What I'm hopeful for is we will see one of the greatest literary villains of all time. Sauron is incredible, and we only saw him as a disembodied, no longer able to take any type of form after he loses that ring. That's what we always saw in Lord of the Rings. And in The Hobbit, this necromancer, this story of this guy, again, that's another iteration of Sauron, but we've never seen a villain like this before. I look at Sauron as like a Doctor Doom style villain. He makes amazing stories, and he has all the things about his manipulative abilities, his persuasiveness. It's not just the cunning and strength. Oh, it'll be amazing. I am stoked.
Yeah. All the power, all the time, everywhere. I love it.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Hopefully the spoilers were good. Did you know, Robert, you could swim from Valinor to Numenor? Did you know that?
I mean, I definitely can because I sink, but well, I'm a little denser than most.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I wish you luck. Thank you for doing this. Hey, everybody, give Robert Bain a follow. Give us a call. Yeah, follow Numenor. Oh, that's going to be exciting.
Season 1 though. You can't have him fall in season 1.
No, that's a season 2 or 3
At,
thing.
at least. You gotta
We
you gotta
have to build up that Numenor is the most powerful nation state in Middle Earth that
Oh,
has ever existed.
in the last 20 seconds, can we talk about the privilege like that is displayed there? No one gave us anything. They actually did give you everything.
We fought really hard. Yeah, and then we gave you an island in
Yeah,
compensation.
and then we gave you a bunch of secrets so you could build this dope city. Get fucked.
There wasn't a contract that was written like, if we help you, we will get this island. No. You did the thing because it was the right thing to do. And the Valar, in their infinite wisdom or limited wisdom, not like Eru, gave you an island. Be grateful.
Some people's kids, I tell you.
Take care, Robert. Thank you for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
We'll do it again.